Good evening, my dearest Tams, or perhaps good morning, my dearest Tams, or in Mountain Standard Time Zone, good something, my dearest Tams. Tonight is chapter 24, The Zephyrs, from Kinship with All Life. Whenever I think of the great lessons that animals have taught me, I feel special gratitude to a wise little philosopher who, for some time, was my clandestine companion and tutor. Our friendship was clandestine because this particular fellow adventurer happened to be a skunk. Not a home-broken specimen, but one who lived a bold and independent life of his own, with great skill and success considering the general disapproval of him. His name was Zephyr. Somewhere in the hills nearby, he had an undiscoverable hideaway where he could safely spend his days without being shot at. Nearly everyone in the neighborhood hated him for his nocturnal visits, and feared him for the things he did to the surrounding atmosphere when they violated what he regarded as his rights as an American citizen. Zephyr specialized in prowling around in backyards, cellars, and garages in a quest of food, of adventure. This naturally brought him into frequent conflict with the neighbors. They often mistook him for a big cat in the darkness and used indiscreet methods in trying to evict him, thereby reaping dire results. They used almost every known method to end his career, but none of them had ever been successful. He was too smart for them with his defense and offensive techniques. My first meeting with Zephyr took place one night in my backyard. He had just knocked over the garbage container and was inspecting the contents. Hearing me, he swung around and readied himself for anything. I stood very still, as other animals had taught me, and began talking silently across to him in a friendly way. I assured him that he was welcome, and I suggested that he continue what he had been doing while I sat down on the ground and enjoyed the evening. Not a move did he make except with his sharp, penetrating, calculating little eyes. But I knew what he was up to. He was adding and subtracting me, sensing the mental atmosphere I was diffusing in his direction. He was evaluating my motives and intentions. Finally, he turned around and gave his full attention to the garbage. Not once did he look back to check on what I was doing. Presumably, he had heard and accepted what I had mentally said to him. When he had finished with the garbage, he moved to within a few feet of where I was sitting and made himself comfortable. He and I removed all mind and heart barriers and relaxed. I let my mental best flow in his direction, and I could feel his mental best, understandingly, flooding back to me. Zephyr became a regular nightly visitor. Well aware of his general unpopularity, he never came down from the hills in the daytime. He would appear at the back of the house at almost any hour between sunset and sunrise, making special code noises of his own to let me know he was there. After some weeks, he began bringing Mrs. Zephyr with him. Later, a number of little Zephyrs came along too. Taking advantage of this unusual opportunity, I appointed the entire Zephyr family my teachers. We used the same educational curriculum that had been so successful with the dog Strongheart. I searched for character values in my skunk tutors and carefully studied what they did with those qualities in their moment-by-moment living. It was a continuous revelation. I had no idea skunks possessed such excellent qualities, such admirable moral, social, and ethical codes. They function as a family unit without the least trace of paternal or juvenile delinquency. I was full of admiration and respect for them. Their behavior expressed mutual love, consideration, understanding, and confidence. They all shared a desire to help one another in all phases of living. While my skunk adventure was going on, I accompanied a friend to a conference which had been called to take some kind of action on the grave crisis in human relationships. There were delegates from all parts of the country. There were many speakers, and each of them had a specific remedy for the situation, but not one of them paid any attention to mental attitudes in the case histories they discussed. It was like suggesting various ways to paint the village pump in order to improve the village water supply. People in the audience were called upon for remarks. I made the suggestion that in solving our relationship problems, we seek help outside the narrow boundaries of the human species. And I briefly shared with them some of my experiences with animals, snakes, birds, insects, and other non-human wise ones who had been my teachers. After the meeting, a Los Angeles lawyer who had been one of the presiding officials told me that while he had enjoyed the novelty of my remarks, he disagreed with my sweeping statement that all animals have valuable relationship wisdom to teach humans. I asked him what animal he thought did not qualify for this. Skunks. He exploded, following with a really bitter tirade against them. It seems he had been in a losing encounter with a skunk a few years ago, and he had loathed them ever since. He insisted that there never had been and never could be a skunk with sufficient character and intelligence to teach anything, even to the dumbest human. I said that if I were to offer him a bounty of $1 for every quality of excellence that he could find in a skunk, I knew with his ability to get at facts, he would find plenty of good abilities and make a tidy sum of money for himself. He snorted politely, and on that note, the discussion ended. It was time for the conference dinner. But that night, as he told me later, the suggestion of $1 each for skunk character qualities went round and round like an insidious advertising slogan in the lawyer's sleepless mind. At his office the following morning, he asked his secretary in the strictest confidence where he could find out about skunks without having to go where they were. She suggested the possibility of a book. He asked her if she believed that anyone had ever thought enough about skunks to write a book about them. She did not know, but thought it could be so. Later, she returned with a number of books and magazine clippings from the public library. Within a few days, the lawyer telephoned and apologized for the uncomplimentary things he said about skunks. "I've looked into the matter," he said, "and I've amended my opinion. As a matter of fact, I know relatively few humans that I consider fit to be called skunks." The skunks had opened up for him, as they had for me, in a way of finding entirely new meanings in life and in kinship. I love you, Tams Nicholson. I hope that you sleep well or have slept well. I know that you are loved and that you are a game changer. I love you, my dear, and I look forward to chatting with you as soon as the opportunity presents itself.